Hello, and welcome to the oral defense for the final paper for DET 610. I'm Sean Owens. Today is August 12, 2012, and the title of this paper is Russia, Strategic Security and National Defense. We'll begin this oral defense by looking at the policy prescriptions supported within this paper. We begin by looking at the Russian economy. The ability for Russia to articulate a clear plan for evolving from a centrally planned economy to a more market-based, globally integrated economy is critical to meet strategic security goals. With security strategies so tied to economic growth, Russia must diversify its economy and emphasize additional means of economic growth. Russia's reliance on commodity exports make it vulnerable to boom and bust cycles that follow the highly volatile swings in the global commodity prices. The government has, in the last few years, embarked on an ambitious program to reduce dependency on energy markets and in turn build up the country's technology sectors, but to date have had few positive results. Success in this arena will allow for economic diversification and potentially assist in strengthening the Russian economy, which would help achieve its security goals. We also propose that Russia address the concerns of a weak protection of property rights and address a private sector that is still burdened with heavy state interference, as this may help open up other industries as well. The second policy prescription supported by this paper details a unified Russian and Chinese security strategy that would undoubtedly be a significant diplomatic voice within world politics that could further the global policies that are mutually beneficial to both countries, as well as address military-based threats from the West, such as missile defense, that both countries have prioritized. The third prescription for improving and strengthening Russia's national security strategy is to approach unification of the former Soviet Union bloc nations carefully. Russia has stated that a primary foreign policy priority is to establish a Eurasian Union. This unification of post-Soviet countries is designed to strengthen Russia internally from an economic and resource perspective, as well as provide border region protection and unification against force-based threats, but it must be done carefully as not to indict or induce new threats. From Russia's perspective, a strong Eurasian Union will help maintain the balance of power with the West. But in order to avoid hostility and creation of new regional conflicts and targeted uprising, it's critical that Russia approach this from a mutually beneficial systems and relationship with the former Soviet Union nations in order to align economic and strategic depth that are benefits to all parties. As we look at the migration of the Russian strategic security from the Cold War into the 21st century, we see that we've moved away from a primary threat of the United States and NATO to more complex threats. This new policy emphasizes the importance of economic growth, technological advancement, and environmental issues on Russian security, as opposed to just primarily force-based threats and military-based threats. We also see a denuclearization of the security strategy, and this is based upon global developments, partnerships Russia has both regionally and internationally, as well as the internal Russian economy, which cannot support the ongoing arms race of the 20th century. As we look at how Russia identifies the current threats facing its national security, economics and the economic crisis of the last 9 years are the primary threats facing Russia from achieving its goals. Regional conflict also takes priority, as well as terrorism, both state and non-state sponsored terrorism, and cybercrime, which has become a domestic issue within Russia as it tries to address both military and business-based internet and web-based growth. In order to deal with these threats, Russia created a policy in May 2009 titled Through the Year 2020. This policy was intended to address both domestic and international-based threats, as well as military and, for basically the first time, non-military-based threats as well. It's predicated on Russia being a top 5 global economy, and it highlights the emphasis Russia puts on creating the Eurasian Union. The academic response to the 2020 strategic security statement out of Russia has been varied. Many of the analysts and scholars do believe it's an improvement and that it addresses these non-traditional based threats facing Russia. However, there's been critique that it's unrealistic and that it doesn't take into account Russia's current economic limitations as well as its economic outlook. There's also critique that it's disjointed and that it was created by multiple voices and therefore lacks continuity. But the overwhelming critique coming out of the academic world is that it's not specific. It does a good job of addressing or identifying, the threats facing Russia, but doesn't do a good job of creating a mitigation plan or a specific plan as far as how Russia will deal with those threats in order to enable its security strategies. As we look at the future of Russia and its national security and defense policies, with the Cold War over and the threats of the 21st century emerging and redefining themselves, it's apparent that the future of Russian, and by extension the rest of the world, including the Western world, security will depend more on the long-term evolution of Russia's international goals than on changes within Russia's military capabilities. This paper proposes that Russia does continue down its current strategic path, expanding national security beyond the traditional force-based threats, that it makes specific economic plan to diversify its economy and grow GDP, that partnering with China to strengthen its diplomatic power will strengthen Russia's security policies and goals, and that approaching the regional unification carefully will strengthen Russia from a defense and security perspective as opposed to weakening it or creating new threats. And this concludes the oral defense. Thank you.